Donovan's Reef is a 1963 American adventure/romantic comedy film starring John Wayne, Lee Marvin, Elizabeth Allen, and Jack Warden. The picture was directed by the legendary John Ford and filmed on the Hawaiian island of Kauai. In February of 1962, Paramount Pictures announced that John Wayne and Ford would make the film together. At the time of the announcement, it was actually titled South Sea Story. This would be the acclaimed directors and the big screen legends' last collaboration together. After 11 movies and over a quarter of a century working together. The filming started in July of 1962. Ford and his production crew had not been on the island for 24 hours when he learned that Paramount had pulled the plug on the financing for the film. The studio decided to go ahead and distribute it, though. So Ford himself decided to produce and direct it. The original screenplay by James Edward Grant was based on a story by writer and journalist Edmund Boulogne, and material prepared by Paramount by James Michener. The director Ford didn't care for the original draft of the film, and he immediately fired Grant. He called in his longtime friend and associate, Frank Nugent, for a quick rewrite of the screenplay. John Wayne would go on to say that he actually preferred the original script to the rewrite because he felt like they lost a lot of good stuff, including a lot of scenes with Lee Marvin. Because of John Ford's age and his declining health, John Wayne was like an assistant director on the set, setting up equipment and checking the pre-edit filming from each day's work. The film's story follows the escapades of three former American Navy men, Mike Guns Donovan, played by John Wayne, Thomas Boats Gilhooly, played by Lee Marvin, and Dr. William Dedham, played by Jack Warden. They are the only survivors of a torpedoed destroyer sunk during World War II. They ended up on a fictional Polynesian island, and they fight a strategic cat-and-mouse game against the occupying Japanese forces. After the war ends, both Donovan and Dedham decide to stay. The doctor marries a beautiful native princess and has 3 children by her, and starts up a much-needed hospital. Guns goes on to open a bar called DONOVAN'S Reef, and also starts up a shipping line. Donovan and Gilhooly share a birthday, which is ironically December 7th. And every year, Gilhooly returns to the island for an annual and now traditional birthday brawl with his old sailor buddy. The film boasts a colorful array of supporting characters. They include a refined French governor played by Cesar Romero and his Harvard-educated Chinese sidekick played by John Fong, an aged floozy LaFleur played by Dorothy Lamour, who actually wants Gilhooly to make an honest woman of her, and the French Catholic priest played by Marcel Dalio. Each in his or her own way, they contribute a lot of flavor and hilarity to a somewhat loose storyline, and it couldn't be much looser than it is. The sudden unannounced arrival of Amelia Dedham, played by Elizabeth Allen, a straight-laced, prim and proper Bostonian, creates an even greater commotion on the island as she seeks the whereabouts of her long-estranged father, the doctor. She must substantiate that her father is not of good moral character. In doing so, she can gain control of her family's shipping empire back home. The film concludes with a wonderful and happy ending. Amelia gets her father back, 3 new siblings, a husband, and all the stock she needs to gain control of the family business. Gilhooly finally marries his longtime girlfriend, LaFleur, and receives Donovan's Reef as a wedding gift from Guns. Everything now seems perfect in the world. Well, until next December, when Gilhooly and guns will duke it out once again, to the delight and pleasure of the island locals. Readily admitted and even confessed, the film is content to simple meandering along, with only the slightest hint of plot. The final screenplay is not exactly the model of a focused and cohesive narrative. It is what happens in those storyline gaps that gives this film its infectious appeal to the viewer. What the film does convey exceptionally well is a feeling of casual, laid-back island living. Ford himself called Donovan's Reef a spoof picture, a whammy, crazy sort of thing. He said, "We're not going to win any prizes for this one." When he was offering Lee Marvin the role of Gilhooly, he told the actor that it didn't matter what the storyline was, because this project was going to be a great excuse for the cast and crew to have a free holiday in Hawaii. For Ford, Wayne, Marvin, and their families, the project was designated to be a bit of summer fun. The crew stayed at the Kauai Inn. Most of the cast stayed at the Kauai Surf Hotel. John Wayne rented a special house on the beach that featured a swimming pool designed to fill with ocean water when it was high tide. There were several scenic locations around the island that were used for filming. The home of the French island governor, played by Cesar Romero, the white beach house with the coconut palms and the green grass, is the Allerton Estate home and former summer residence of Hawaiian Queen Emma. It is now part of the National Tropical Botanical Garden. Many agree with John Wayne that Lee Marvin was shamefully underused in this film. There are large gaps of time with no mention or hint of his character. This caused me to almost forget that he was in the film. But when Marvin is on the screen, he plays a good-natured drunk in a very entertaining manner. He chose to do his own stunts throughout the film in typical Lee Marvin fashion. Many of the mornings he woke up so hungover that the filming would often have to be rescheduled for another day. John Wayne and Lee Marvin would often go out drinking together while they were shooting the film. This was despite John Ford's efforts to keep them apart. One night while out doing this, Wayne returned home after a drinking session and saw a group of Catholic priests, and he just launched into them with verbal attacks on the Catholic Church. He felt terribly guilt-ridden about this the next day, and on the spot he made a monetary donation to a church charity for the Catholic Church. In one fight sequence with Lee Marvin, Wayne underestimated an uppercut. He crashed through a table and fell onto the floor. Director John Ford decided to keep that scene in the movie. Now, John Wayne was somewhat embarrassed by the finished product of this film. He admitted his character should have been played by a younger actor, saying that the script really called for a younger guy and that he felt awkward romancing a young girl of that age. At the time of the filming, he was 55 and Elizabeth Allen was 33. Because of the age difference, John Wayne felt very uncomfortable with the romantic scenes, and he asked John Ford to cast Maureen O'Hara opposite him instead, but Ford refused to do that. After Donovan's Reef, Wayne made the decision to limit the romantic interest in his films to mature women. Elizabeth Allen was actually an adequate substitute for Wayne and Ford's favorite, Maureen O'Hara. Just 3 months earlier, in April of 1962, Elizabeth Allen was signed for a feature role in Columbia Pictures' Diamond Head. Ford ended up visiting the set and spotted her in a muumuu. He immediately cast her for his upcoming film, Donovan's Reef. Donovan's Reef was released in the United States on Wednesday, June 12, 1963. And also released that very same day was the epic Cleopatra. How'd you like to go up against that one? Donovan's Reef was a moderate financial success. It was produced on a budget of $2.7 million, and the film grossed $6.6 million in just Canada and the U.S. alone. Being the final director-lead actor partnership between Ford and Wayne, the film does not exhibit many, if any, of its participants at the top of their game. There is something, though, about the film's relaxed, almost reckless tropical island manner that I find enjoyable, charming, and refreshing. Looking at Elizabeth Allen for another hour and a half is actually grounds for rewatching the film again. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.